they say. Try to work on your Buddha, but you really listen, believe it or not. So, I'll figure that
Okay. So who do you have here now?
It's just Nathan and for grandsons.
Got it.
So it doesn't make it easy. Everybody's everywhere, so it's fine.
Right.
At least I can work anywhere, so it doesn't matter.
That's right. Okay, so let me share the screen.
So Joshua, class, like 80% of divorce this month.
Really?
Wow.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Ein balabayis over al iser baltolin, ela im kain tevo hasocher l'shalim avur schar avodaso. So an employer is not in violation of baltolin unless the employee has asked for payment. Avur schar avodaso o shetova v'lo hayelo kesef l'shalim eino over al iser baltolin. The only other situation where he would not violate Baltalin, so one is where the employee has not asked for payment, and number two is where you simply don't have the assets.
The liquidity.
The liquidity. But that's provided. When we say a person is not liquid, it means that he has no merchandise that he can sell. And no assets. But if you have merchandise that you could sell, you have an obligation to sell it. Let's say other people owe him money and he just hasn't bothered collecting yet. He can't exempt himself from paying his employee just because he's been too lazy to collect his debts. Okay, he could always collect the debts and pay his employee. And furthermore, he's obligated to borrow money if he has the ability to do so in order to pay his employees on time. So now, where does that come from? That's, I think, the first time I've seen that he's obligated to borrow money. So let me just see in the footnotes if he has any.
Does that include selling fixed assets like real estate?
Yeah, well, that's what we learned.
It's really hard to fashion a case where someone's, I mean, God forbid, but someone can't repay.
Yeah.
Or can't pay.
Well, it can have receivables. Some of those business owner money, where the money coming in from is, and it's just I'll tell you
Can you collateralize the receivables?
That's not so, yes and no. The banks will do it, but it's not so easy.
Right.
You need a little bit of line of credit and.
Yeah, no, I hear it. Yeah, that's a good example.
He writes in the footnote, he says, let's say a person has a bank instrument for a certain amount of time. He bought a CD, but it doesn't mature. Do they have CDs here?
GIC.
GICs? Yeah, he bought one and it doesn't mature for a year. Okay. So and he stands to profit from allowing the GIC to mature. But and he could always cancel the program, but there are penalties he's gonna have to pay. He says it would seem at face value that there would be no obligation for him to withdraw that money if he's going to have to lose money in order to withdraw it to pay his worker.
He may not lose money, but he will lose the opportunity to make money.
Well, so that'll depend. That'll depend. L'cha'ora nira lilmo medivrei haritzva sham ve'orachos chaim sham Shekasav im yesh pikadon v'higia hazman mikri itach sheriyachol lakachas mehem. The language of the Rishonim is, if a person has an object that is of value, that is in someone else's possession, and the time has arrived for him to collect it, then it's considered to be that he has assets because he could always collect that asset. But so it seems like that if the time has not matured, then he would not be obligated. So, in other words, if someone has something of mine or assets of mine, and the time has not arrived for them to pay me back, then I'm under no obligation. Then I can still consider myself assetless because the loan hasn't matured. So the same thing would be if I have a GIC, it would seem that way as well. Ella she'ipcha mistavra kol sheyachol likach hamos ulevatel etochnit hachisachon mechuyav lasos came. But on the other hand, if you can cancel the program, the bond program, the GIC program, Eli imkein kishein be'efshurusa kagon shatanai shahabank mechayev litkufa misuyemet ve'eno yachol levatel ve'eno yachol lahotzi ematai sheyirtza kein yerlin yastaiti. He says the only time that you would be exempt is if the bank simply won't release the funds before a certain time. Are there programs like that?
It's non-redeemable GIC.
It's not a non-redeemable.
So there's others that are, if you cash it earlier, then you just don't get any of the interest.
Right.
Right.
So that he feels
about losing money as opposed to.
right. So that he feels you'd be obligated to do. Okay.
It's almost like the Chol Moed question about, you're gonna lose money or you're just not gonna make money by working.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let us go on. A lot of blank pages. Now, he feels that he's covered sufficiently. Wow, a lot of blank pages. The laws of paying your workers on time, because we had seen a lot of it already. So let's now go on to laws of partnership. Piskei dinim. Shutaf she'eno rodza li'itasek b'schora shekanu. Yochol hashutaf hasheni lachufo, o liskor acher b'makomo, o yechafuhu lachlok b'shutva shebenehem. Let's say two partners have purchased merchandise, and one of the partners does not want to do business with that merchandise. They originally agreed that they're going to purchase merchandise in order to sell or to refine and to process. And one partner says, I'm not interested anymore. So the other partner can coerce him to do his share because you have to follow up on what you started. Liskor acher b'makomo, or he can hire someone else in his stead, and I guess send the bill to split the cost of the worker with that partner. O yechafuhu lachlok b'shutvus shebenehem, or he can force him to dissolve the partnership, and the partners would split those assets, the merchandise. In other words, once you've committed yourself as a partner, you don't have the opportunity to back out of the job. Just like a worker who can't, once he's accepted a job, he can't quit in the middle of the job. If he promised to finish a particular product, so too a partner who is already committed to a certain project cannot back out of that project unless he's ready to dissolve the partnership and pay for whatever the start was. So shutuf shenishba. Now, what if two people are business partners and one of them gets kidnapped? Shutuf shenitvas al yedei hashaltonos al yedei listim. Let's say he is incarcerated either because of the government or because of terrorists, violent people. כגון שהוליך סחורוס השותפוס למקום אחר למכור, ונשבע והוא צריך לפדוסו. So, and you can redeem him, you can get him out, you just have to pay money. So let's say he was kidnapped in the course of doing business for the company. So, for example, he travels to some dangerous place where they both agreed he could go to engage in business. I don't know, let's say he went to Libya or Sudan. And all of a sudden he finds himself behind bars, and it's a corrupt government. And they basically say, give us $10,000 or $100,000 and we'll release your partner. Hashutaf hasheni enu chayiv lishtatif behotzos pidyono. The partner is not obligated to participate in his redemption. Ve'im pidao hashutaf b'mamon yachol ligavos chelko mimaos hashutfas. And if he does redeem him, like he pays, he writes, he wires over money to save his partner, he can take that from that can be deducted from the corporate account, meaning that they would, whatever, if they count that as a business expense, they would split the cost. Elanira im oso esek shahayu bashutvim hayabar lahem shenachshav ke'esek misukan. So he says the only exception to this law would be, so first of all, he starts off by saying the second partner is not obligated to pay for his release. Although there is a mitzvah, there's a mitzvah of pidyon shvuyim that I have just for anybody else, but I don't have to use my personal funds. I can either ask your wife to come up with the money, or we can take the money out of the corporate account, and we would split we would chalk it up to a business expense.
It's maybe more realistic. That could be realistic too, but where a partner is traveling and unfortunately he has a heart attack and he passes away when he's in some far off country, and all the expenses involved with that of getting his body back and everything else like that. So there could be a lot of expenses with that. So would that go as personal, or would that go to the company?
It could be that the expenses would also be split by the corporate account.
It's a business trip, though.
Because it was a business trip, right? If they were on vacation, then probably not. But if it was because of the business, that I would imagine so. Elanira im oto esek shahayu bo shutvim hayabor lehem shenechshav ke'esek mesukan. He says, if, however, the particular business effort that they were engaged in was known to be dangerous, okay, they both recognize that. V'hashutav hasheni yada sheyesh sakana b'shlichuso al hashutav shel hashutav l'makom shaholech im nitzvas chayv lishtatev b'fidjano mimamon hashutfas. If the second partner knows that there's a danger by sending his partner out to that place, so then if he gets arrested, then it's clear that he's obligated to save him, and he takes the money from the corporate account. So the first, I just want to clarify, because there's an ambiguity in the language. The first part is that the partner who's kidnapped, the other partner, can take the money out of corporate and demand that the money get put back in. In other words, he can always collect whatever he spent to redeem him from the corporate and takes it out of his partner's portion. Okay, that's number one. But if it was known to be a dangerous endeavor and they both agreed that he should go, so then it's a risk that they're both taking from the company, and then it comes from corporate account, and they split the loss evenly. So in the first case, it was not known to be dangerous, and that for that reason, the first partner has no liability, and if they're going to take money out of the corporate account, it's going to go to the loss side of just the partner who was kidnapped. If they both knew there was a risk of this happening, and they both decided to go ahead with it anyway, So then they split the loss equally between the two of them.
It's not quite fair. And what happens, he makes a huge gain with that big risk. It's just to split it, right?
They still split it because of the business, right? So in a case where it was known that there's a risk, yeah, he took the risk for both of them. But if he gets kidnapped or gets incarcerated, they split the difference because he's basically taking a risk on for both of them they both have to take the hit. Okay. So I mean it makes sense. So the case that he's referring to in the Rishonim is a Tshuvas Harash that's quoted by the Tur. Reuven v'Shimon hayeshutvim v'nishba Reuven upida ehu Shimo. So Reuven and Shimon were partners, and Reuven gets kidnapped or incarcerated, and Shimon redeems him. Umesu Reuven v'Shimon uba'o nishosehem lachalok. Both Reuven and Shimon then pass away shortly thereafter, and their wives are now entitled to inherit the business, and they want to divide the business between them. Okay, v'tovas almana Shimon kishir pidyon Reuven shanatal min ha'emtza. And the almana of Shimon, who was the guy who spent the money to redeem Reuven, she says that she's entitled to get all of the money back from the business for the expense of redeeming Reuven, and that should all be on her side of the division of the business. V'hishiv almanas Reuven ba'alech pida'eu meha'emtza v'chaya achar kach kama shanim v'lo tava. And the almana of Reuven, the guy who was kidnapped, she says, well, your husband split the amount from the corporate account. In other words, let's say it cost $10,000 to redeem him. So he basically took it out of the corporate account, but it was marked as 5,000 from the side of Reuven and 5,000 from the side of Shimon. And your husband was alive for a number of years and never demanded that Reuven pay back that $5,000 into the corporate account. Va'od kishenishba halach be'esa kashutvis v'roi liftoso be'emtza. And furthermore, the reason why Reuven got kidnapped is because he was going and traveling for the business. So it's only right that Reuven and Shimon split the cost. So the Rush was asked, who's in the right? Who's in the right? So the answer is, Yero Eli Kidivrei Almana Shimon, Kilonis Chayiv Shimon Bepidjon Reuven. So he says, it would seem that Shimon's Almana is correct. Shimon had no obligation to use the money that was rightfully his from the company to redeem Reuven. The Davka Gabe Refua She'in La Kitzva, Amrinan Shehi Kamo Mizonos. But he says it's only when it comes to healing someone from an illness that we say that you can, that a woman is entitled to be, a wife is entitled to be treated and can drain the estate for those costs of the medical expenses. Aval ones tfisa ushavia ein ze kamo mizonos. But when a couple is married, the husband is not obligated to exhaust all his financial resources in order to take care of his wife in that respect. So v'shutav enu chayiv b'achrayus chavero. He says, and even more so does that hold true with a partnership, a business partnership, that one partner does not become completely liable financially for his other partner. We are just like a shomer sachar for each other. In other words, you're watching my assets and I'm watching your assets, and we both benefit. So he says, "Aval be'esek shmiras gufos Kol echad shmiras gufo olav. But when it comes to protecting one's personal safety, that's not part of the business agreement. And each partner has to take that responsibility for himself. Ve'ein chiyuv b'shmiras chavero afal pi shelo tov Shimon kol yomav bishvil zeh lo machal ki ratzu lahamtin ad she'as chaluka ad kam l'shana. And even though, says the Rush, that Shimon during his lifetime never demanded that Reuven return that extra $5,000 back into the business account, it could be just because he was waiting for the business to be dissolved, for the partnership to be dissolved. He didn't feel that it was necessary for him to demand that Reuven put the money, back on his side of the partnership, because he was waiting, and yeah.
Is there such a thing as statute of limitations in Jewish law?
With certain things,
There is
but it depends. There's there's such a thing called chazaka. If a person is a squatter on a piece of property, so then and no one protests, so then he can claim that he has squatter's rights based on the fact that 3 years have elapsed and no one has staked a claim against him. But it really depends on the case. So the Kasav Beis Yosef Sham Rambanu Bala Iter Iskimu L'Divrei HaRosh, the Chaim Pasuk Morin B'Shulchanu HaTorah LaHalacha. So all of these poskim side with the Rosh, the Beis Yosef and the Ramban, all side with the Rosh. Umasha Kasavnu Shim also Esek Shayibo Shutzim Hayabarlam Shnachshav Kesek Nistakein Misukan Zal Piach Sam Sofer B'Tshuva. He says, but the Chassam Sofer qualifies this halacha and says that if they both knew at the time that Reuven traveled that the place where he was traveling to was inherently dangerous, and that there was a significant risk that Reuven could be incarcerated, then they both agreed to take the risk and split the cost of that risk. And that's what the Chassam Sofer says to qualify the Rush. In other words, the Rush's case is only where they weren't aware that there was any kind of risk involved at all. And the truth is that in most situations, a guy goes to Russia or he goes to somewhere in Europe, there's no reason to suspect that he's going to be detained and then have to come up with money in order to be released, because those governments are fairly stable. But is there an outside chance? Yes, but it's not something that they really think about as a significant business risk. But if the guy goes to Libya or Afghanistan, and where it's known that there, or even Pakistan as a Jew, where it's known that there's significant risk, so then it's pathetic that going to Pakistan today could be a sakana, but it's still true. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next case. Shutvim shekanu schora, v'lishneim yesh lahem rechev. Okay. So next case. Oh, sorry. I skipped a whole bunch. Okay. Next case. Ha'omer lechavero kanei okach schora zu, v'ani eshlatef imach v'holach v'kana. Reuven goes over to Shimon and says, Shimon, I noticed that you're in Italy. There's a particular merchandise that's available. If you buy it, I'll be your partner in selling it, and we'll split the profits. So Nasa Shutaf HaMishalech Ba'os Eschara Kevin De'in Shlichus Tzarech Kinyan Ve'en HaMishalech Yochol Lachzer Bo Me'oso Kinyan. So entering into a partnership agreement does not require a kinyan. All it requires is a verbal commitment. And once you make a verbal commitment to be someone's partner in an endeavor, you have to follow through with it. If you don't follow through with it, Shimon can take the Reuven to Beis Din. There are a number of cases. Like another example is where I hire someone to do a job for me. If I verbally commit that this person is going to, let's say, be my plumber, I don't have to sign a work order in order to be contractually obligated. once I've hired him to do the job, and therefore I become liable.
So we're talking here short term, right? If I wanted to bring in a partner into my business
Yeah.
long term, that would need some sort of kinyan, I would imagine, right?
Well, I would imagine it would if the terms of the partnership have not been delineated. It would, first of all, it would only make sense that a long-term partnership should be drawn up on paper so that it,
Right? That's a law that we have to.
well, Dina de Malchusa would apply, a partnership would require some filing of taxes because you have an LC, right? You know,
And liabilities, and I'm sure.
right, and liabilities, but technically, I'm just saying without talking about Dina de Malchusa, when you say like a long-term partnership, it basically means you're saying that two people agree that from now on, any kind of merchandise in this kind of area that we purchase, we're equal partners in. So it depends. It depends on what was understood. A lot of times you could certainly appreciate two guys survived the war and they go into business and they never had any paper. There was never any paper between them. But it was understood that our business is shmatas, and we're in the shmata business. And so we've been working together for 30 years. We've never had any contracts between us. It would seem that in that kind of situation, they are each responsible for the business equally, and they can't just walk away from the business without some kind of compensation and dissolution of the partnership. Or if one of them dies, the other partner can't say, well, we never had any written agreement, so therefore I don't have to pay the almana anything from the business. Right? If one partner dies, then there's a dissolution of the business, and the business is split in half. Or the surviving partner has to buy out the heirs of the other partner. So even in a long-term partnership, you wouldn't necessarily need paper written up.
Well, that might be philosophy, but let's say it's going back to Tina, the courts would never probably go by that.
Yeah, but in cases of financial, in any case where halacha makes you liable, you can't claim Dina de Malchusa to exempt yourself. Okay, you can't claim that I'm going by the law of the land. You can only go by the law of the land if it obligates the two of you to do something more than what the halacha obligates you. But to get out of stealing, where you can say, well, I'm not stealing from the almana of my partner because Dina de Malchusa says that if there was no paper, there was no partnership, that you can't do. And by the way, we'll wait for Marv to come back, but I'm not so sure that Dina de Malchusa would not recognize that partnership. There's facts on the ground are that they've been working as business partners for the last 30 years, so that you can't just say, well, there was never paper. Okay. All right. Next. Shutzim shekanu schora, v'lishneim yesh lahem rechev. So two partners purchase merchandise, and each one owns his own car. V'hashutaf harishon ishtamish berichbo lahavas haschor mivli lahudi al ken lachavero. So one partner uses his own personal vehicle to transport the merchandise without consulting first with his partner. Ha'im notel schar hovala male al hashimush berichbo. So is he entitled to be compensated for the wear and tear on his car from the business account? O yachol liton hashutaf hasheni shegam keinu yachol lahavi esaschar berichbo, or can the other partner say, I could have just as easily transported it with my car? V'lachein yesh lo liton mimachzis schar ha'ovala, o yesh lo lekabel al hovalas hascharo kepol botol. And therefore, the argument could be, no, you can't take the write-off from the business just because you used your car, because I could have used my car as well. So the bottom line is that you have to eat that. And next time we'll use my car. In other words, does a partner have a right to unilaterally decide to incur an expense and then bill the company after the fact, right? Without consultation to the partnership.
It depends if it's 50-50 partnership, if we own 60%, that's 40, then he can do it.
Right. It depends how the business is structured as far as who has the deciding, like who has the, what's the term I'm looking for? Who has who can make the decisions?
Majority,
Right. Who can make the decisions for the company? Okay. Well, so we'll go over this again, Amir Hashem, tomorrow. Take care. Have a great day.